I want us to understand what inspiration says in Great Controversy 590. I think it's 598. She says we have a chart pointing out every waymark on our heavenward journey, and we ought to guess at nothing. So we have a chart, she says, that points out. She says, like, as we are walking, there's a waymark saying you're 2 meters closer, you're 1 meter closer. So she says that there's waymarks on our way to heaven that indicates how close we are to heaven. Now I want us to see in the book of Luke. Does Luke give us these waymarks? Luke chapter 21. Luke 21. I want us to start in verse 25. Luke 21, 25. It says, and there shall be signs in the sun, in the moon, and in the stars. And upon the earth the stress of nations with perplexity. The sea and the waves roaring. Verse 26. Men's hearts failing them for fear and looking after those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of the heaven shall be shaken. Verse 27. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Now, I'm going to suggest Luke has given us from verse 25, he gave us events. And he concludes in verse 27 with the second coming of Jesus. Now, I want us to look at this chart that Luke gives us. Now, and I'm going to suggest that inside this chart, we're going to see the war between the king of the north and king of the south. It's predicted inside this chart. And in this chart, the mark of the beast is predicted there as well. You cannot see it now, but we're going to show you it's there. Now, in this chart, what are the events there? I see some of us are drowsy. Please.
The sun, the sign of the sun.
There's a chart. So tell me, what is the chart? We can't sit and just, we need to speak. What? So this is the chart that's going to take us to the end. Speak to me. I see one brother's awake. Brother, speak to me. So there's going to be the signs in the what? The sun and the moon. I'm not going to put the stars with them. Sun, moon, and then we're going to put your stars. And then it says, now this is where I want to zoom in. It says, what does it say? The stress of what? And thank you. The stress of, it doesn't just say the stress of, it says the stress of nations with perplexity. So you have to see the stress of nations combined with what? Yeah, you'll get the point, perplexity. And then what comes next? Okay, sea and the waves roaring, okay? What comes? Okay, men's hearts are failing for fear, for looking for what's coming upon the earth. And what? It says the powers of the heaven shall be shaken. So let's put here powers of the heavens. Powers of heavens shaken. And then what does he say is the last event? The second coming of Jesus. So this is a chart from this point to the conclusion of the matter, which is the second coming of Jesus. Now, inspiration says in the book Education, my question to you is this. What year are we in today? What year is this? What year? 2022. In this chart of 2022, you must be able to pinpoint where we are. You say, why do I say that? Education 178 says, the inspiration says we must be able to pinpoint where we are in the prophetic chart. Education 178, the woman of God says, the history, this is history, which the great I am has marked out in his word, from eternity in the past to eternity in the future, tells us where we are today in the great procession of the ages. She says that all that prophecy has foretold has come into pass can be traced in the pages of history. Let's pause there. She says all that prophecy has foretold has come into pass can be traced in the pages of history. What do you call it when prophecy is now fulfilled? What will you call that? Prophecy, when prophecy becomes fulfilled. Okay, light. Thank you. But when prophecy becomes fulfilled, what do you call that? It's history. What we look for in the future is prophecy. What we look at in the back is history. So, when, for example, Daniel predicted in Daniel 2, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome. That was prophecy in Daniel's time. But in my time, that's history. It's not prophecy. Because why? It has been fulfilled. And then she goes on. She says, She says, the history which the great I am has marked out in his word, uniting link of the link in the prophetic chain, from eternity in the past to eternity in the future, shows us where we are today in the great procession of the ages. So she's saying that what God has linked out in his word, she says we can look at this chart that is linked out from eternity in the past to eternity in the future, and we must be able to pinpoint and say this is where we are in this chart. So my question is this: where are we in this chart? In 2022, where would you place us in this chart? So you say the stress of nations. You say, so are you telling me that prophetically, 2022, you're telling me we're standing near the stress of nations?
The signs.
Sorry?
But the signs.
What are you saying? By the signs? What sign? We can't be, we're not near. Where are you saying? Okay, so what I'm hearing, people are saying the stress of nation. So you're saying in 2022, this is where we are standing. I'm asked, do you know what's the powers of the heavens been shaken? What is the power of the heavens been shaken? Let's see publicly. Come with me to Hebrews 12. Hebrews chapter 12. Hebrews 12. Hebrews 12. Before we study what the power of the heavens been shaken, we must first identify what shakes the power of the heavens. What shakes it? I want us to see Hebrews 12, verse 25 and 26. Tell me what shakes the powers of the heaven. Before we study the shaking, we must first understand what shakes it. Hebrews 12, verse 25 and 26. It says, see that he refused not him that speaketh. For if they escape not, who refused him that spoke on earth, much more shall we not escape if we turn away from him that speaketh from heaven. Verse 26. Watch verse 26. It says, whose voice then shook the earth. But now we had promised, saying, yet once more, I shake not the earth only, but also heaven. Question, according to this verse, what is the thing that's going to shake heaven? Because it says powers of the heaven shaken. What is it that shakes heaven according to this verse? God's voice. So let's write down this. So according to, we understand what's the power of the heavens been shaken to identify where we are in 2022. And does the Bible predict the war between King of the North, besides Daniel, King of the North versus King of the South? Now, what shakes the powers of the heavens? Speak to me. The voice of God. Now, before I go any further, let's see who's good students here. History, Bible students. Can you tell us, someone tell us, when was the sun and the moon, when was the sun and the moon affected? And the sun and the moon became darkened, because he says there's going to be signs in the sun, in the moon, and then he says, and the stars. When was the sun and the moon affected? Because when you go to Matthew says the sun and the moon will be darkened. And the moon shall not give a light. Matthew, Mark, and Luke all speak of these signs. 19th of May, when? Speak to me. So this took place 19th May, 1780. Now this is basic Bible studies. This is basic your elementary studies. We've covered this. So we know definitely we're not in the sun and moon era. We passed the 1780s. When were the stars? When did the stars fall from heaven? Because Matthew says the stars will be fallen. John says in Revelation 16, they're going to be shaken from the sky. When were the stars shaken in the sky? Literally every star in the sky was moving out of its place. When did this take place? 13th November. When? 13th November 1833. 1833. So I know for sure we're not in the sun and the moon because we passed 1780. We're not in 1833, we passed it. So that means I'm somewhere between the stress of nations, powers of the heaven shaken, and the second coming of Jesus. Now, I want us to see, now we are studying the powers of the heaven shaken to identify where we are standing prophetically. Come with me now. What shakes the powers of the heavens? Now come with me to Joel. Joel's going to tell me. He's going to